Hi, everybody. Welcome to our channel, our Scientology Stories, Peeling the Onion. My name is Mark Fisher, and again, I'm with...
Janice, Gillham, Grady. G'day, everybody. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Janice. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. I have
That's
both my
great.
boys on the couch. They're fast asleep. They're being good, and they'll be quiet. So I hope Misha's in the same mood.
Well, Misha's out on the porch out here. It's a little chilly because it's cold right now in Las Vegas. And if she starts to bark, I'll hit the mute button. But if not, I'll just close the door.
Okay, good. Well, today is a continuation of a video we'd done earlier, and we'd lost our guest due to computer problems, and so he's come back this time. And last time we were covering where I was locked up for 11 days as a list one, someone who rock slammed and had evil purposes. So I was locked up, and this person was my security guard to make sure I didn't escape. And instead, he escaped. So we're going to go into this. This is going to be fun, just the old memories back in LaQuinta and his escape story.
Okay.
So let me welcome.
Go ahead.
Tom Defour.
Hi, Tom. How you doing?
Good. How you doing, Mark? Janice, how you doing?
Good.
Hi, Tom.
You know, Mark, you just reminded me. I just got through reading a book. Is Inside Scientology by Janet Rittman.
Yeah.
You went through a lot of trying times, shall I say, with Miscavige. I know you have too, but I didn't meet Mark before.
No, that's right. I actually helped Janet Reitman. She was a reporter for Rolling Stone magazine at the time, and then they decided she did an article, and then she decided to do a book, and it took her 2 or 3 years. But she interviewed me, and I haven't read the book in a long time, but you must have read about that in there, and I gave her a lot of information.
I was looking for some of my books because you guys have hashed up some old memories. And Janice, I had a bunch of your books, but we somehow got friends or acquaintance with the pilot of Tom Cruise, and Cruise was asking him, kind of pushing him into Scientology. He wasn't a Scientologist yet, and he found out we were ex, so we lent him all our books, and we don't have them anymore and never got them back. I don't know if he joined or not, but
anyway.
Janice has all the books.
Well, you call him. You should call him and find out.
I don't have his number anymore. We left back in California. We left all that, and no, I haven't kept track with him. But yeah, I would like to.
That's good. Have you seen Janice's book here?
Yes, I did, and that's one of the books I lent him, I believe.
Oh, okay, good.
Oh, good. I hope he read it.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to him. So anyway,
if any of our viewers want to order Janice's book here, there's book 1 and book 2. You can get them autographed. Go down into the description down below in our merchandise store and click on them, and you can order them.
Yep.
Anyway, fabulous.
Right.
Well, I was going to we'll go ahead and just do a summary. We're going to get started, just sort of summarize a little bit what we went over the last time, and then we're going to carry on with your story, Janice, and with your story, Tom. Okay?
Sure. Just telling me where we left off.
Well, this is WHQ in LaQuinta, California. It was the winter headquarters. And Janice, why don't you describe where it was and all that just briefly?
Yeah. Winter headquarters was located in LaQuinta, just outside of Indio, California, or half an hour drive from Palm Springs, 15 minutes from Palm Desert. It was out in the middle of the desert. There was a hotel called the LaQuinta Hotel right next door. And when we actually sold the property, LaQuinta Hotel bought it up. So anyone who goes to the LaQuinta Hotel now would actually be playing tennis where we used to swim, because they turned the old swimming pool into a tennis court, or going for yoga lessons in the longhouse where we used to live. So there's a lot of memories there. And I actually went back there in 2018 and took some photos, of which some are included here, I think. But anyway, it was winter headquarters because later on we also got the Hemet, the gold base, which was called summer headquarters. It was on the other side of the mountain from Palm Springs. But this is where Hubbard moved to after Well, he was in Washington, D.C., and then he moved to California and lived in the apartments, which I was telling you about in Messenger #7 series. And then while there, he purchased Winter Headquarters, which was 5 different properties, I believe it was, and then moved there at the end of 1976. So I showed up in April of 77. The FBI raid occurred and he disappeared and went to Sparks, and then he came back in January 78. And this is when he started doing the filming. But before that, he was doing recordings, which, Tom, that's where you were involved, is doing the recordings of the voiceovers and earlier lectures and so forth. So there's a picture of Tom back in the day in 1977. So, Tom, do you want to explain what you were doing?
Well, first he was doing the filming. So I would do the dailies, which is, I can't remember whether it's 16 millimeter or 35, but whatever it was, they'd be processed and then they'd be given to me, and I'd go through and edit it out and get it into an orderly fashion. And then the evenings, I'd bring them up to only just after he ate dinner and set up the projector and show him the dailies of that day. And then he also had a project going where he was sending cassette tapes out to all the different orgs, like, hello, Adelaide, we're doing this and this, and how you, he did it for each org that was going on. And those were audio cassettes. So what we did is I edited out all the burps and the beeps and all the background noise and all that kind of stuff. And then we actually,
this is an example of Hubbard. This is an example of Hubbard doing a recording, but this is not at W. This is a different place.
I think that was in Dunedin, but
right.
Yeah.
And then after that, he left to the winter headquarters, I believe.
Washington. After Dunedin, he went to Washington.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Then we had a big old, I can't remember, it was a 16-track mix board there. That's right there. And then back in that back room, you can barely see it back there. That's where he'd sit, and we'd mic him up, and he'd do his recordings there. And
Tom, I don't know if I asked you this before. What was he like to deal with when you were doing recordings?
It depended on the day.
What side of the bed he got out of?
But I remember there was one time we were setting up the mics, and he was just getting so upset at me. I was adjusting the mics for him, and I was behind him, and he just broke down into a tantrum that the mics weren't right and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of like strange to me. I mean, it's not the man that I had envisioned in my head before I, met him. But for the most part, he was okay to work with. I mean, he had to do things his way, and that was it. So, but it was kind of nice. Is in the evenings usually when he came down, and he wasn't in a rush, and he'd take some time to tell stories. I mean, these fantastic fantasy stories about past lives and the Galactic Federation. I mean, back then I bought it all, but it was kind of silly.
Was he kind of like a show, like a storyteller showman? Like, was he like telling these big stories and like to impress everybody? I mean, is that how he came across?
Trying to impress everybody, but he loved telling stories, and he is a great storyteller. I mean, he was, that was his thing, was telling stories, and he's very charismatic, this big, deep voice. And it was interesting. He was an interesting man.
Was he personable? Like when he walked in, would he say hello, Tom, or
yeah, very much so. There was one time, I think it's probably around the time Janice was getting in trouble. I got in trouble for some reason. I remember I went up to set up the recording, the daily videos up there, and they were having dinner, and Archie was there, Suzette was there. I don't know if Diana was there, but the family was there, and I was probably a couple feet behind him. That was a typical setup there. And
that's in Rifle. That's in the house, right?
I believe so. Yeah, I'm pretty sure is that Rifle, Janice?
Yeah, that's Rifle. That was actually probably around Christmas time when Diana and John showed up with Roanne, because Roanne wasn't even a year old yet.
Yes, Rifle
Yeah,
was his house in that complex. That's what it was called, was Rifle.
right.
But
And that window in the middle there between the door on the right and the door on the left, that was his office.
yes,
No.
I went up there a number of times fiddling with his audio or whatever. And that was kind of interesting too. You know, I'd be underneath his table fixing things, and he was working on something. He'd sit and chat after a while, which was kind of interesting. Mary Sue, I remember walking by a couple of times, but she never stopped to talk. I think, I don't know if it's because I was there or whatever, but I really didn't get to know Mary Sue at all. Did a couple things with Archie. We went out on liberties and stuff, and DM back in those days, David Miscavige was just a young kid. He had no power, and he was
Right.
an okay kid at that time before he got power. And you know how that saying goes: you get power corrupts, and absolute power absolutely corrupts.
Yeah.
I wasn't there when he got in control, and it sounds like he really got a very sadistical narcissist. But
Yes.
anyway.
So after they ate dinner, you would then show the rushes, the actual film clips or whatever that was shot.
Yes, and I do remember setting up behind him. I was probably 3 or 4 feet behind him, setting up the projector, and I was in trouble. I never knew what I was in trouble for, but it's one of those things where the messengers come down and say the Commodore wants to know in the middle of the night. But anyway, I was setting up the projector, and I think I was in trouble because he's about to start talking about me to the other people. He says, and he started to talk, and he stopped, and he looked at one of the messengers. Is Tom here? And I was right behind him, I mean 3 feet, and that just kind of. This is an OT8, I believe he's OT8 at the time, able to exteriorize, know everything that's going on around his environment, and he didn't know I was 3 feet behind him. That was just one of those little things that you start thinking about, you know.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask both you, Janice, and Tom.
Yeah.
What was it like when he would lose his temper? You know, we've experienced David Miscavige losing his temper, right? At least Janice and I have. How did it compare to the way L. Ron Hubbard was when he lost his temper? Was it similar? Was it explosive? Was it profanity laced? I mean, what was it like?
Go ahead, Janice.
To me, it was explosive, but he was out to turn it off right away. As soon as you pointed out that something was handled, he'd turn it off and act as if he'd not been mad and just continue along his merry way. You know, and I say, oh, that's interesting, because usually when I get mad, I still feeling it afterwards,
Right.
you know, but he could just turn it right off. What do you think, Tom?
I agree. Some of the times he'd get angry down there while we're setting up the mics, basically, or the sound wasn't just right, and he'd go off. He was very upset. I don't remember him using a lot of profanity, but it was very, you know, he's got that deep voice, and it was something when he got angry. But I found that if you just handle what he's upset about, you don't back away and start, you know, cowering. You stand up, not stand up to him, but you basically said, you know, sir, if we do this, this will work. And then he'd calm right down. Like Janice says, he didn't hold on to the grudge. I didn't think, anyway. Right. I did. And I was crushed after he left. I thought, whoa. Anyway.
Yeah, but you're right. He wasn't into profanities. I remember sometimes on the ship he might swear, but then he usually always apologized later on for having sworn.
Yeah. I remember.
Not like Miscavige. No. He turns profanity into an art form. He's the most profane person I have ever been around.
He becomes vulgar.
Yes.
Miscavige is vulgar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one evil person from when I hear. Now, when I knew him, he had no power, and he wasn't like that.
He was 16, 17 years old. Yeah, he was very young.
If that much, yeah. He was a young kid at that point. And yeah, I don't know how bad he got, but when I've read and heard about him, that's just not right. You don't treat people like that.
You know? Anyway, you were telling a story. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
I've forgotten.
Oh, that's okay.
It happens to me, you know, as you get older.
Yeah, you were talking about when he was asking if you were in the room or not, and then you realized that he's supposed to be OT8. Well, that was a different OT8 at that time, but he didn't have the awareness that you were 3 feet behind him.
Yeah, that's correct. But I remember now. I was about another time that he got I saw him very upset. I wasn't involved in I wasn't the subject of the upsetness, but that picture you had of him out there filming with I think that was even the day he had this long trench coat on, a black trench coat. The people were setting up these crummy sets. I mean, these sets were horrible, but maybe it wasn't that same day, but everybody was setting up the equipment, and I happened to be walking to lunch or something, and I remember him coming out from rifle with this long black jacket on, yelling at the top of his lungs, rah, rah, rah. And I don't even know what he was mad at, but he started yelling at the crew and they started jumping around. But he could really get angry. But like Janice says, it stops almost immediately when he's satisfied.
Yeah. And then just to point out in this photograph, this is a posed photograph of the Cine shoot crew at the time with L. Ron Hubbard as director. But just to point out that the young kid in the middle in the all white pants and white shirt and the long hair with the camera, that's David Miscavige right there.
It sure is.
Yeah.
I tell you, those films, I got to see him. I mean, that was torture.
They're terrible.
These films. The sets were so corny, and it was just, I thought everything had to be filmed in the sunlight. He thought that lighting was perfect for this with the sun. So all the sets were outdoors, and they were so bad. I think he did some back in Clearwater, didn't he? Up there on the top floor of the.
Yeah, I was going to say the photos I remember was from the Volunteer Minister's Handbook, and they were shot up. I guess Unimed shot them up on the garage at the Clearwater, and they're all like the posers are like, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? They're all like so hammy, you know, and you could tell it's sunlit, you know.
Yeah, but who am I to comment on that? I wasn't a film guy. He's supposed to know what he's doing, so I don't know.
I was an actress in some of those films.
Oh, were you?
That's right. Yeah. Okay, so then who is this here, Janice?
That is me on my 21st birthday.
Where was
that was in LaQuinta in the Longhouse.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and in the yellow shirt, that's Wick Alcock.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I used to play tennis with the external comm guys, so they gave me a little tennis outfit.
In those days, we didn't wear the uniforms because it's supposed to be a secret place. And
right. Well, all the guys had long hair and dressed kind of like cowboys or country bumpkin type of look, and that's when everyone came up with the fake names because we didn't do that in Clearwater, but we did it. We did it in LaQuinta. That's where that started.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So Janice, go ahead and give a quick summary about. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to ask Tom what his fake name was.
Oh, Brad. Brad somebody. I don't remember the last name. I didn't have to use it often. It's just, if you go into town or something.
How about you, Janice?
Jan. People just call me Jan because we didn't want to confuse LRH.
Right.
If we were with him in town.
That's right. Yeah, and that's how Mark Rathbun became Marty Rathbun. That was his name there.
Yeah.
Going into town was something else. We weren't allowed to look at newspapers. I mean, we got a briefing. You can't look at newspapers. I wanted to go to the library. No way. You can't go to the library. There's a lot of rules about going into town. But we still did. I mean,
that reminds me, how much of a town was there? I mean, like literally, if you had to go, how far away was it to go to like a convenience store or to the drugstore or grocery store?
Indio was the closest, I think. There was a little town that went through this little canyon. I can't remember the name of it. There's a gas station there. But in Indio, we usually went to Indio. Sometimes we go into Palm Springs. But Indio,
or Palm Desert.
Yeah, Palm Desert.
There was the Circle K about 10 minutes away.
Yeah, that's the year we go through that little canyon thing. Yeah.
So you go for little candy runs or coffee runs or whatever there?
No, you didn't go for coffee runs.
No.
Maybe someone would go for a soda or to get gas.
I
You
get
had
it.
to go to Circle K.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
see.
And that was in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
Right.
And then,
Not now, but yeah, back then it was. Yeah.
right. And in Indio, you drive down the main road and all that was there was pretty much date shakes.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Little
love those.
stands, stands that would make date shakes. And that was pretty much all that was there.
It was so
And
hot
palm
there.
trees.
You're probably used to this, Janice, but I remember it being so hot. You walk across some of those asphalt parking lots and your tennis shoes would stick to the asphalt. I mean, it was, but Indio was nothing town. It was just a dirt all around, desert. It was
Yeah.
ugly little place.
Okay,
Yeah, I
so
remember
Janice,
they had some department store that
Yeah, that's
it
right.
also had sold popcorn in the department store. And, it's like there was nowhere else to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Janice, why don't you go ahead and summarize the story about when you were locked up, and then we'll carry on from there.
Okay.
Because that's where we ended off the last video was
Yeah.
you being locked up. So go ahead.
Okay, well, I was being locked up because I was supposed to have evil purposes on Mary Sue Hubbard, and therefore I was supposed to go to the Rehabilitation Project Force, which I refused to do. So I was put under guard, and while under guard, this is the driveway that, because I was to be kept separate from everyone else who were fine on being in the RPF, I was to be kept away from them. I would walk up and down here with a guard, and just to mess with the guards, I'd break into a run and they'd come running after me, and then I'd turn around and walk back. I'd just screw with them thinking I was going to take off into the desert. It's like, where am I going to go? There's like maybe one house within a mile. Everything else was further away than that. And, a lot of orange grows and lemon grows and grapefruit grows. And that was pretty much it. Anyway, so finally I went down and I was going to go see Maria Starkey. And instead, they ended up locking me up for 11 days. And you can go back to the earlier story with Tom where I go into all those details. So I get locked up for 11 days, and every night they have a security guard on me. And during the day, they actually came and gave me some paper and said, here's some paper and a pen. If you want to say anything, write a note to the case supervisor. I'm like, I'm not going to write a note to the supervisor. There's nothing wrong with me. So since I had nothing to do, I took the paper and I ripped it up into 52 pieces. And I made myself a deck of cards. And so I sat there for 11 days playing solitaire, or I'd soak in the bathtub because there was a bathtub there and no one was allowed to use that bathroom because my mattress is in the hallway. And there's my own bathroom. So I'd either soak in the bathtub or I'd play solitaire. And whenever someone would come in to bring me food, my deck of cards would go under my mattress, so no one would know that that's what I'm doing.
Like prison.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hide the contraband.
Well, it was a prison.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so I was under 24-hour guard. They'd turned the lock around so that I was locked in and they could operate the lock from the outside. And Tom happened to be my security guard one of the nights. And the next morning, they come in and they're looking around. They don't say anything to me. They're just looking around and then they leave. And I'm like, what was that about? As God comes in and just looks where I'm in my bathroom behind the shower, and then they leave. It's like, I had no idea what it was about until later I find out Tom took off in the middle of the night. And they thought, well, maybe he's in talking to Janis or something. And that's why they came in looking for him and didn't find him. So Tom, you take the story from here.
Yeah. I believe I was on the RPF at that point.
Yes, you were.
Yeah, and I thought shoot, I'm going to be next and locked up in there because I'm starting to have thoughts about Hubbard. I'd actually done OT7, I think it was, and it seemed like science fiction is fantasy. And I started having a lot of doubts about that. You can't talk to anybody about it. Hubbard wasn't the guy I thought he was. You're locked up. You know, there were only, in my observation, you have a different observation, I'm sure, Janice, is that Hubbard was close to a couple people. You were one of them. You're one of the people he seemed to interact with as a very a trusted friend, I would say, even. Some of the others was Kima Dunleavy seemed to have a good rapport with him. Remember the steward Paco? He was a guy.
Oh,
Yes.
I forgot where he was from. Colombia.
Paco was from Mexico. Mexico.
He was a flamenco dancer.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
he was just I saw him interact with Hubbard, and it was a very pleasant interaction. And then why you get locked in there, it just baffles me. I mean, you're an evil person against Mary Sue? Come on. I mean, she was like your mom, and there's
Right.
just silly stuff like this going on. I just had enough. I was really disillusioned with Scientology at that point, but you were the key that got me to pack up and say, I've had enough, I'm gone. But I was really disillusioned at that time with Scientology because I joined on, back in those days, they had the Advance magazine back in the, I guess it's late 60s or 70s before I joined. And there was promises of getting OT8 was like your complete control over matter, energy, space, and time, and you're helping the world. And I thought, this is great. Right out of high school, I left and I joined up Scientology, and I worked my way through. I remember Clear was really not, I played the part. Yes, this is great. I feel good. And then you get to OT3 and on these other OT levels. This is baloney. And I wasted all my time. I enjoyed the time I was there. I mean, I didn't have these work crew or abuse that you guys had when you around Miscavige. And I had a lot of fun there on the ships and actually meeting the old man and all that stuff. But he wasn't the guy that he promised to be. And I remember leaving after I left the Sea Org. My wife and I, we were friends with Jerry Armstrong, and he was suing the church because he was doing a biography on Hubbard. And he found out that a lot of the stuff that Hubbard claimed was a bunch of baloney. So June and I went to the trial with Armstrong to listen to all this stuff. We were just in the audience. And I remember one time talking to the attorney that was for Armstrong, and he said his plane was sabotaged by he flew a plane quite often. He's a pilot. And his plane was sabotaged by Scientologists, where they cut the fuel line or something. I mean, they found out before anything serious happened. So again, that just reinforced to me that this was a bunch of baloney. This Scientology was a fantasy world. It was not. It was not reality. So anyway, I left, packed my bags up, and took off. Unlocked the door for Janice. I'm sorry, Janice, I didn't let you know I was going. I don't know if it would have changed anything. I mean, you had connections.
I would have probably left with you if you had said, "Hey, do you want to get out of here?" I probably would have said yes.
I apologize. I should have let you know the door's open and I'm taking off. But it was in the dead of night, and I just had a duffel bag. I mean, everything I owned was in a little duffel bag. And I took off and went through the desert down. I can't remember this. There's a main drag that goes from Indio through into Palm Springs and Indian Wells and stuff. And one of the guards, sometime during the night, I mean, it's a long walk. I don't remember how far it was. It's quite a ways to Palm Springs. I had no plan, but I thought, okay, I got enough money to go to the airport.
It was a half-hour drive to get to Palm Springs.
Was it that far? Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah.
20 minutes, half hour. Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
Well, I walked, I don't know, an hour or so, and it was getting close to twilight, and I think I came across a bus stop and got onto a bus, and the bus took me to the airport eventually. I mean, we're a roundabout way, and they didn't have their drills down really well about blowing like people like they did back then. I mean, now. So luckily the flight was taken. They have flights often going up to Los Angeles or Long Beach or Los Angeles. And I hopped on this little tiny plane and flew into Long Beach. The reason I picked Long Beach is I'm familiar with all the harbor down there, being on the ships.
Right, right.
And I just got in a hotel, stayed there for 2 weeks trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And I went down to the docks, and there's a lot of fishing boats down there. I thought, well, I'm going to get a job on a fishing boat. And nobody'd hire me. So eventually, I have a great family. My dad was in Scientology, my older brother, my sister. I mean, we have a lot of, and they were still in Scientology at that time. And my dad was taking courses in Nashville. So he's a Scientologist. And I knew if I went there, it's probably going to get him in trouble. But I was running out of resources, called my dad. He said, come on. So I went over to his house, which was in Westminster, California, which is in Orange County. Mm-hmm. And he put me up. Asho told him, hey, listen, you can't, if your son is living with you, you have to disconnect from him. He said, forget that. You want my money? Then that's not going to happen. And the money talked, so he kept going to Asho, and he didn't get kicked off the course. And then my brother was in Los Angeles as well. And he had a small construction company, so I got to work on I went to work for him doing remodeling. And that's where I met my wife's brother that I didn't know is her brother. And I said, I know another guy, Chris Byrne, that looks just like you. And I said, well, you got a sister, don't you? He says, yes. And we had to be working on a job just down the street. I said, take me to her. So we went to down the street to where she was working and began a romance. And 40 some years later, I'm still married. We're still married.
This is you then, right?
Yes, that's shortly after I was out of Scientology. I was
right.
I still thought I was a Scientologist. It took 10 years to Scientology would say destimulate or to get Scientology out of your mouth. It took about 10 years for me to say, that's it. I'm not a Scientologist.
Peel the onion.
Yeah, exactly. And we had friends that were in Scientology still. So I guess I'm not sure. Maybe the disconnection wasn't strictly enforced back there.
No, not like today.
Yeah, not like today. I do remember seeing it.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you, Tom. Did they ever come looking for you? Like, did you feel like you were a rabbit on the run? You know, when you were going to the airport in Palm Springs, or was it different then? Because I mean, like you said, there were no blow drills or anything like that in those days.
Well, they did come looking for me. It was still dark out when one of the. You notice they had 5 B210s, Datsun B210s.
Oh yeah, those cars.
They're all green, all the same color.
And so one of those came zooming down the road looking for me. So I know they were looking for me. But they didn't.
You mentioned jumping into bushes or behind bushes or something.
There weren't many bushes out there, but there's a big tumbleweed that I hopped into, hoping there's no rattlesnakes, and didn't want to wake them up. But years later, they did come after me. My wife and I were married by that time. I think we had a child. This was sometime after I had left. And one of the guys from Winter Headquarters, and I don't remember his name, came to me, briefly tried to get me back in Scientology. And I said, there's no way I'm going back. And had me sign some documents, which I don't even remember what those documents were. And that was it. So I was never harassed or anything after that. June was, she was in the GO and did some nefarious things with Snow White and all that kind of stuff. So some people were looking for her. Wackenhut was a private investigation, came to her mom's house trying to look for her, which was in Pennsylvania. So she was harassed somewhat, but later in the years, they just left us alone because we weren't talking, and we pretty much disconnected from all Scientologists, not willingly, but it just happens. You start making your own life.
And they didn't declare you or anything like that.
I'm sorry. Which one?
Go ahead, Janice.
You stayed connected to your brother-in-law, Chris?
Yes, I did. Until Chris left his Scientology. I don't know when he did. And he was married to Betsy Byrne. I don't know if you remember her, Betsy Perker.
Sure.
Yes, I'm good friends with Betsy.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
And Chris went on to, he did various jobs, but he became a ranch manager for a large Fun for Animals, I think it was called, where they had giraffes, they had
At Cleveland Emery.
Yeah, that's us out sailing. That's my daughter there. We used to do a lot of sailing. I had a boat out in California. Chris used to come out with us and go boating and stuff.
That's Chris on the right.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Let me ask you. Let me fill in. I wanted to ask a few questions just to fill this in. Okay. So when you left, you went to your father and all that, and then you started working for your brother, and then you met Chris's brother and all that, right? So yes. Then, what did you stay in construction? Like, what was your career path after that?
Well, I eventually got my own contractor's license in California, started my own company, and worked on that. And in 1994, there was a large earthquake in California.
Oh, yeah.
The Northridge earthquake. And construction wasn't doing that well. I got a job with an insurance company assessing damages so that they'd know what they had to pay. And I found out, wow, this is pretty neat. So I got a license as a public insurance adjuster where I represented people who had damage, but the insurance company wasn't paying for it or paying adequately. So I got into that and did quite well. I was a 10-year stint in California just on the earthquake. It took 10 years to get back to normal. I did a lot of apartments and condominiums, basically getting people or homeowners associations their money from the insurance company for the earthquake. And then we continued that. When the kids grew up and left, June was also a licensed public adjuster. You have to be licensed in each state, a lot like your mortgage stuff. You have to be continuing education, all that kind of stuff. So we did, basically in the South, we worked on hurricanes in Florida, earthquakes and fires in California. We worked in Colorado. We worked in Georgia. We worked in New Jersey, all these different hurricanes and stuff. But when the kids left, we bought a motorhome, or not a motorhome, a fifth wheel, and just traveled the country working that way. And that was a good work for us. It worked out very well.
Good.
So you were basically in Orange County for many years, and then like you said, you bounced around doing different states and stuff with the adjustment.
Yes, our kids were raised in California. They were born and raised in California. We had 2 daughters. So getting out of Scientology, we worked there for a number of years. And then when they grew up, we moved to Florida. Gave them the keys and said, we're gone. They're all like, what? But they're old enough at that time. So,
how did you settle in Georgia? That's where you are now, right, Georgia?
Yeah, well, there's a big fire in Tennessee, the Gatlinburg Fire near Gatlinburg. Well, it's in Gatlinburg. A lot of buildings burnt down and stuff. So I flew there just to see if the work, if we could when we set up, running your own business, you have to set up all the infrastructure and stuff. Like you have to get an office and all that kind of stuff. So we were seeing if Tennessee was worth it. But when I went there, it's the most beautiful place. We traveled all over the country, and in those East Tennessee mountains, the most beautiful place. So the work that we couldn't really help a lot of people because most of their homes were burnt to the ground, and basically they just pay policy limits. There's not a lot of work for me to do to help them to get more money from the insurance carrier. But we ended up buying a 52-acre parcel out in the middle of nowhere. It's outside of Gatlinburg. We could get to Gatlinburg probably in about 15 minutes or so, and we basically put in a road, built our own house. June and I built it ourselves. We didn't hire contractors. We couldn't find any good work. And it's beautiful. Right next to a creek. We had a waterfall in the backyard. Bears coming through there. I mean, we loved it. About the time we finished, we figured, we're kind of lonely up here. And we had grandkids in Georgia. And we used to drive down there. June did it more than I did, but it's about a 5.5-hour drive to Atlanta area where she was living, South Atlanta. And we said, we just got to move where the kids are. So we sold the house and moved down here. And that just happened within the last year and a half or so. So we're here closer to the kids. We have kids in Houston, but they're doing very well. My daughter here married a narcissist that was horrible, just horribly. He just cheated on her when she had 3 young kids. So she needed help, and that's why we're here. I probably told you more than you need to know, but getting a little bit.
That's okay. Can I ask you a question? Were you ever declared a suppressive person? Probably not, right?
Yes, I was eventually, and I sent Janice the link. It was in 1990 something. I just happened to be doing a little bit of research and came across a document that had a whole list of declared people, suppressive people.
Maybe that's that list that we showed Janice.
Yeah, it is that long list.
Yes. I was wondering if I had the whole thing. I had only copied the front and where I was.
But they never sent you an actual issue, right? In other words, you just saw your name on the list.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Yeah, I never
typical. I mean, Janice and I have copies of ours because, of course, we were poster children for people who blew, and we're going to declare you right away. So, but they don't do that anymore. Pretty crazy.
Well, they were a bit scared, I think, when I left because, that was a secret place, and Hubbard was there, and it was a very secure place, supposedly, and they're afraid I was just going to spill the beans, I guess. I don't know. Was that any reason for him to move at that time? I don't know what happened after that.
Well, after that, there was a couple called Ernie and Adele Hotwell. They were from Las Vegas, and they were there on the Cine. Adele did costumes. She used to do costumes in Vegas for the different shows.
At Winter? She worked. Was at Winter headquarters?
Yeah, Winter headquarters. Yeah, because I remember. She did when I had to dress as a Puritan for one of the Puritan films. Adele had just made all the outfits. Anyway, Adele and Ernie did not like LRH's temper and how he yelled and screamed about everything, and they blew. And they actually went to the press.
Oh.
And their oldest daughter was actually the executive director of Las Vegas Org. Mary Gay, I think, was her name. Anyway, and Mary apparently is still a Scientologist, but they went to the press, and then the press showed up at Winter headquarters, and LRH took off.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, yes.
Oh my.
And that's when
right?
Yeah, well, we'd luckily by that time had purchased the gold base.
Gillham Hot Springs,
Yeah, Kimma had done a deal where, LRH had been there doing filming and found out it was in bankruptcy. So Kim and him discussed her going to the bankruptcy court and bidding on it. And that's how we got it, was out of bankruptcy. So there was already planned to have a summer headquarters and a winter headquarters, but there wasn't anywhere for LRH to really go. So he ended up in a hotel for a short period until they got the apartments in Hemet, which we referred to as X. And then then the whole move happened from W, winter headquarters, to S, summer headquarters, gold. And that was at the end of 78.
Yeah, that's about the time I left, I think.
Yeah.
And then Janice, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I believe that Scientology actually repurchased a rifle, that they actually own that building, from what I heard.
Yes.
The house, yeah.
Yes, they did. They repurchased Rifle because that was LRH's home, just like they purchased his old place from the 50s in Phoenix and other different places where he'd lived. They purchased all those. And I guess, I don't know, they should purchase the little apartment building down in Hemet.
And King Arthur's Court.
and King Arthur's Court.
Let me ask you.
Dunedin.
They own so much real estate at this point. Can Scientology survive off the income from just the properties, do you think? In other words,
if they rented those out, but a lot of them stand empty, or the orgs are in them, and the orgs do have to pay rent. But I'll tell you the way they get their Sea Org reserve set up, because those Scientology buildings were purchased by Sea Org reserves, or if there was donations, they were then donated to Sea Org reserves. And Miscavige's stat was Sea Org reserves. So for him to be upstat, that stat had to be climbing every single week. Otherwise, he wouldn't qualify for Liberty if it crashed or it went down. So what they used to do is new appraisals oh, time to do a new appraisal on this building, and that might give us another $100,000 to increase the sealed reserves.
Oh,
Right.
not to get another mortgage because they're probably cash.
It's
No,
all
no, they
cash.
own them all
Just
cash.
for
Yeah.
statistics. Yeah.
But
Okay.
they'd
Yep.
reappraise them in order to say, oh, Sea Org Reserves is larger. Now they are the largest landholder in Hollywood. You know what I mean? They own the most real estate property values and stuff like that in
And
Hollywood.
Clearwater
I've seen
too,
that
for that matter.
in the LA Times. Yeah. Well, particularly in Hollywood because they own the complex, they own the Hollywood Guarantee Building, they own the Hollywood Inn. You know, these are all prime real estate locations. They just bought
Fifield Manor.
Yeah, Fifield Manor, that's right. And then the TV studio that they bought several years ago, that's over in the Silver Lake area. So yeah, no, they own a lot of real estate. You know,
But
if
it seemed to
the
me-
church all folded, they'd have huge assets that they could sell, and they would be worth millions and millions of dollars. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a couple questions for you, Tom.
Yeah.
Sorry, so you were declared, right? So
Yes.
what was your relationship with your father and your brother? Did they continue in Scientology, or did they eventually get out, or what happened with that?
My dad, he basically gave it up after a while, but I mean, I was very close to my father. He eventually died, along with my mother as well, some time ago.
Yeah.
And my brother, Jerry Dufour, he formed a squirrel group. And I think he was with David Mayo. I'm not sure when Mayo set up the Santa Barbara places where
Yeah.
he was delivering Scientology.
Advanced Ability Center.
And then my sister, she stopped going. She linked up. She was best friends with Loy Young. I don't know if you remember Loy Young.
I knew. Yeah, I knew Lloyd.
Bob Young's wife, Captain Young. So my sister and Loy were best friends, and Loy had some sort of weird thing going on too. Part Scientology, part I don't know. I never got into that. After Scientology, I had enough of that stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then my
Well, it's
younger
good that
brother-
you were able to. It's good you were able to reconnect with your family. You know,
I have a great family. Yeah. I have nothing to
that's
complain
wonderful.
about. Yeah, my dad was in the military, and we lived on the military bases, the small bases, which were great for kids. I tell you that. Not mine. Mine's right here. My dog loves watching TV, and he's watching you guys right now.
Oh.
Luckily, he's very quiet. He just heard the
Yeah.
dog bark and he got up. But anyway, I came from a very good family, and they were very supportive when I left. Even my brother Jerry, who was starting to get into a squirrel group. Ian Waxler, I think you ever come across Ian Waxler?
Yeah, Ian's still in LA. He has a landscaping company. He's doing quite well.
I thought he's in Florida.
But no, I saw him, I guess it was a year or two ago. He came over to the store and picked me up, and we went and had some lunch. And
okay.
yeah, and I actually planned to interview with him. So I got to schedule that actually. Thank you for reminding me.
He and my brother are very good friends, and my brother's in Florida.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. Hey, Janice, and then why don't you tell, you said in the other video that, Mary Sue finally wrote you a letter and you got out. Why don't you wrap up the story that what happened? You got out and then what?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, after 11 days in isolation and under God, I got a letter from Mary Sue Hubbard. Now, I had to assume that Hubbard had told Mary Sue because Mary Sue is located in Los Angeles because she couldn't be near Hubbard because the whole FBI raid and the crimes the Guardian's office had committed under her direction. So every day they wrote each other letters anyway, briefing each other on what's going on in their own life. So Hubbard, I always assumed he wrote Mary Sue and told Mary Sue that I was in isolation. I was wanting to leave. I'd been assigned, as a rock slammer. So I ended up receiving a letter from Mary Sue. And it was probably about 3 pages long. I don't have it. Like a good Scientologist, I sent it to my PC folder. So that if anyone decided to see, well, what handled Janice, said, here's the letter, but it was a very nice letter from Mary Sue. Going over, I worked for Hubbard for 10 years, 6 hours a day, 7 days a week practically. And so it was Mary Sue kind of going over my history and my dedication and that type of thing. And then going into what is a few months on the rehabilitation project force in comparison to 1 billion years. It's really nothing, and encouragement that, I could just go on, quickly do the RPF, and I'd be off in a matter of weeks. And this was during the time where it was considered that you should only be in the RPF maybe 2-3 months at the most. Not like today where there's people there over 10 years or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, but it was supposed to be a quick program. So after getting this letter from Mary Sue, that's when I was finally like, okay, well, where else am I going to go? My mother had died a few months beforehand, so I couldn't go to her. My dad was down in Phoenix. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't even have pages. I had no money. I had just turned 22. I did not know the outside world. My reaches those days was, Circle K or everybody together going to the movies in Palm Desert. And that was kind of my world. Everything was within that base.
Right.
And so that's where I was like, okay, yeah, what's a few months? I could do that. Though I didn't want to. I did. I agreed and I did it. And that's a whole nother story, I think, doing the RPF and what I went through on that. I never got abused or anything. I remember I refused to call people sir. And Bill Lazzaroni was the bosun. And Whack Alcock was teaching me to weld. And I was welding some stuff down in the stables at W. And there was a spark or something, and I yelled for Whack. And Bill Lazzaroni heard, and he comes in and he says, you go take a lap. You should be calling him sir. And I'm like, oh, Jesus, this is what it's come to. So I just went off, ran, came back. Bill left, and then Whack and I are back talking. Whack is like a big brother to me, so I never called anyone else sir.
Yeah, Whack is a great guy. I remember him. Great welder.
Yeah. But I did learn to weld. And I learned to build sets, and I used to have paint fights with John Brousseau while on the RPF. So there were some good times there, and I learned how to make yogurt, and I learned how to cook, and
Not my dog, not mine.
That's mine. Sorry, UPS guy came up.
And I also learned how to make a bench. I made a bench. Do you remember Leroy, Tom?
Leroy who?
Leroy Turner.
Big guy?
Turner, big guy, like 300 pounds or something like that. Well, Bill Lazzaroni taught me how to build a bench. And I made this bench, and I was very proud of it because we didn't have enough chairs for dinner. And I come in, and I put my bench down in front of the table, and the bus arrives, and all the RPFers get off the bus and come in, and Leroy goes and sits down in the middle of my bench. So, and I'd put the support on where the legs were. He sat right in the middle where there was no support, and the whole bench went. And that was my bench. It didn't even last one person sitting on it.
Oh, no. How embarrassing, huh?
That's funny.
I'm sure they made fun of you on that one, huh?
Yeah, well, and that was my woodworking days.
Yeah,
well, I tell you,
funny.
Whack was on the Excalibur for some time. He was sent from Flag to the Excalibur. I don't know why. That guy welding, he's one of the best teachers. He was welding he's hanging upside down into the bilge and welding with one hand while he's hanging on, and perfect welds. I mean, that guy was amazing in welding.
Yeah. Yeah, he was very good at a lot of engineer type stuff.
And he's just a great guy.
Yeah.
An Australian too, huh? An Aussie.
New Zealand. He was a Kiwi.
Right. That's right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, we've reached the end of the video here. Tom, is there anything else you'd like to mention or talk about here regarding this whole thing?
I'm just so glad I'm a WOG. It's so much better than being a Scientologist. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just glad I'm out of that whole fantasy land, and that's what it was. I still, I go back and forth on whether Hubbard believed what he was spewing out or whether he didn't. And he sure acted like he did, but then it was a lot of it was about money. That he didn't seem to care too much about money, but he sure liked having people around him admiring him, and he surrounded himself by true believers, basically, so that anybody that would say something bad about him, they're out of there.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you.
I still wonder whether he really started to believe because he surrounded himself by all these people who say, yes, sir, just agree with him and never question him. I wonder if he actually believed in what he was saying. But I kind of lean towards the idea that he didn't believe. But anyway,
I always felt he believed in it, and because he took himself in session nearly every single day. We would set up that e-meter, and he would go in and he would audit himself away. And he saw someone would have trouble. They get in ethics trouble, and he'd go, there's some sort of out tech for them to be in ethics trouble. And then he would call for their PC folder and review that, and then do up lists and say, assess these lists and find out what indicates. And, so I believe he believed in it.
And then the last 6 years of his life, he was in hiding with 3 people. And, he eventually, had several strokes and all that. But I'm sure that lack of contact with the organization and with people, I think, he dwindled down, you know what I mean, in terms of his own health and everything else. So.
Well, I remember being a rifle going into his bedroom. On the side of his table, there must have been 10 prescription drugs right there on his table. And that was another thing. He was not a healthy man. He was very unhealthy, at least at winter. I don't know about prior to that. I'm sure he had some health issues, but.
Well, I don't remember pills and stuff like that. I remember he had stomach issues, and this is the first time I heard of Melanta, because he used to take Melanta for his stomach upsets.
I remember seeing a bunch of bottles on there, and they all had the prescription thing on. But
it could have been after. Were you there when he had his stroke? Then David Mayo had to come and
it could have been after the stroke. Yeah.
I mean, it could have been like blood thinners and things like that after he had a stroke.
It could be.
Anyway.
Yeah, because he did have that stroke in late 78. 78.
Yeah. When that happened, did everybody know that something was wrong, or was it kept quiet, Janice, there at the base at W?
Kept quiet.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Tom, we want to thank you for being here. I'm going to just do our little business here, and then we'll wrap things up. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel. Just click on that subscribe button. Janice likes to say rock slam those likes, since she was a rock slammer, and that's why she was locked up in the first place. But anyway, no, it helps us if you subscribe. It doesn't help us personally, but it pushes out our stories to other people who might be interested in the stories about Scientology abuse. So please subscribe to our channel. And if you have any questions or comments on anything that we've talked about today or anything else, please ask in the comment section below. We check them routinely. If you'd like to support our channel, you can buy me a coffee. It's down in the description of the video. There's a link. Just click on it. We appreciate any support. Any donations are greatly appreciated. And then the other thing I want to mention that we haven't mentioned in a while, you can become a member of our channel as well. You just click on the join button on our channel homepage, and there's different levels of membership, and you get different perks as part of it. So if you're really interested in, keeping up with us all the time, that's a good way to do so. And that's that. One last thing I forgot. If you want Janice's book, it's available. She'll autograph it for you. We'll send it out. She, we get them out right away, either book 1 or book 2. You'll see it down below on the products. And both books are available. They include photographs and great stories. That's Janice right there on the cover with L. Ron Hubbard when she was 13 years old with her flood pants, as she likes to say. But anyway, if you're interested in the books, please order them down below. Janice, anything else you'd like to say before we end off?
Good job, Mark. And thank you, Tom. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Janice.
Thank you. Hold on. After I end the recording, we'll talk to you on the other side. I'm just going to play this exit video. Until the next time, everybody. Bye-bye. We'll see you next time.
Bye.